What is a clause? Is clause a sentence? Hi and welcome to Alisra. In this video lesson, we are going to discuss about clause and its types. Clause are a group of words that contains both a subject and a predicate. There are two main types of clauses. One is known as independent clause, whereas the second one is known as dependent clause. What are the differences in between these two types of clauses? Independent clause is also known as main clause, whereas dependent clause is known as subordinate clause. Independent clause functions independently as a sentence, whereas dependent clause, it cannot function independently. Independent clause forms complete independent thought, whereas dependent clause does not form complete independent thought. Therefore, independent clause stands alone as a sentence. On the other hand, dependent clause is marked by words such as subordinate conjunctions, relative pronouns, or relative adverbs. If you look towards sentences, you would clearly differentiate in between these two, as I like to stay in a fancy hotel. On the other hand, whenever I travel. First sentence, it forms complete independent thought. Whenever I travel, question arises, then what? Now focus on the second example. We struck up a great conversation with a person. On the other side, whom we met on the plane. Again, an independent sentence, it conveys complete thought, whereas dependent sentence, it is incomplete. Looking towards the third example, animals are cute while they are young. So this side information, I like to stay, we struck up a great conversation, animals are cute, all these can function alone as an independent sentence. Whereas, whenever I travel, whom we met on the plane, while they are young, all these, it relies on information from another source. Now, if we look towards independent clause sentences, as it conveys us complete sense, I like to stay in a fancy hotel. This is a sentence which conveys complete independent thought. We struck up a great conversation with a person. Likewise, to first sentence, this is also complete in its thought. So this is a sentence which we call as a simple sentence or a statement. So an independent clause which is complete in its sense give rise to a sentence that is known as simple sentence. If we join dependent clause with an independent clause, then it forms a sentence, and that is what we call as complex sentence. Whenever I travel, I like to stay in fancy hotels. If I join dependent clause and after that a comma with independent clause, it would form a sentence, and that is known as complex sentence. Similarly, we struck up a great conversation with a person, comma, whom we met on the plane. Again, if I join an independent clause alongside dependent clause with a comma, then it would form a sentence, and that would be a complex sentence. Moreover, if we want to form with two independent clauses, a single sentence that would give rise to a sentence which is known as compound sentence is she wanted to play tennis. He wanted to play basketball. These are two sentences which stands alone as an independent thought. But if we want to join both these sentences together, so what we need to do? We need to put a conjunction. She wanted to play tennis, comma, but he wanted to play basketball. Once it is connected, these two sentences, they are connected together, it would form a sentence and that would give rise to a compound sentence. Look towards another example. I like to visit library, comma, and I enjoy going to bookstores too. Again, both these sentences can function independently, but if we join these two together, it would form a sentence and that would be compound sentence. Instead of putting comma and a conjunction, we can also put in between two sentences a semicolon to make a compound sentence. If we want to form a sentence, a compound complex sentence, for that we need two independent clauses, and with those two independent clauses, we need to chain or connect a dependent clause. Focus on the previous example. I like to visit library, comma, and I enjoy going to bookstores too. These two, they are independent clauses. If I connect with these two independent clauses, a dependent clause, because I love to read, comma, I like to visit library and I enjoy going to bookstores too. So this would give rise to a sentence that is what we call as a compound complex sentence. Now this is how clause functions. If it is independent, then it forms a sentence that we talked about, known as a simple sentence. If simple and dependent clause is connected, it would give rise to a complex followed by a compound and a compound complex sentence. Stay tuned to us. If you do have any comments, shoot it in the comment box below. Hopefully you would have understood things.